Welcome to the Gay Buddhist Forum, where teachers from all schools of Buddhism offer their perspectives on the Dharma and its application in modern times, especially for LGBTQI audiences. These talks are offered freely to the world and made possible by appreciative listeners. If you would like to support our efforts to share the Dharma with underserved audiences, please visit gaybuddhist.org. There you can donate, find a list of upcoming speakers, or enjoy many hundreds of these recorded talks dating back to 1996.
Okay, welcome once again. It's our custom at this point to go around and introduce ourselves. So let me start with me, Waldo.
I'm Amos. My name's Henry. Paul. John. Mitch. I'm Philip. I'm Thom. Kenny. Thanks.
Harley.
My name is Roy.
Lee Robbins.
Stephen.
Jose.
My name is Mark.
Michael.
Jess.
Jim. My name is Ray.
I'm Clint.
I'm Shanti. My name is Jerry.
I'm David.
I'm Jack.
I'm Kay. George.
Bob.
Angus.
Michael.
Peter. My name is Tage.
Larry.
I'm Tony. I'm Hal.
I'm Hal.
I'm Jim. I'm Joe. I'm Richard.
I'm Kaleo. I'm G.
David.
Thom. Okay, so it's my turn to introduce the speaker. Today's speaker is Thom Phillips. Thomas Phillips is the Proprietor of Praxis, counseling services, a health and wellness consultancy based here in San Francisco. He's a certified therapeutic body worker and a nationally certified exercise trainer with over 15 years of experience leading wellness retreats for men. Thomas has served as co-president of the Association of Certified Sexological Bodyworkers, that's ACSB, as a volunteer massage therapist for clients at the Immune Enhancement Project, and as a community advisory board member of Magnet, the men's health clinic in the Castro district. He has practiced meditations for over 30 years and yoga for over 20 years. So, welcome.
Thank you. Namaste to all. I understand you've already had a session of meditation this morning. So you're in a grounded place, I hope, and filled with your own awareness of your energies. When Bob asked me to be a presenter for your group, I was pleasantly surprised and thought, okay, well, I'm happy to come and offer more information about something that I enjoy doing. And then, of course, maybe weaving it into some of the more serious traditions that you all embody here. But I'd like to do a little audience check-in, if I may. How many of you have experience in yoga? Very large number. Very good. How many of you have experience in naturism? Naturism is a pleasurable pursuit of enjoying life without the confinement of textiles on your body. There are organizations that are dedicated to naturism. In fact, they fight laws that seem unfair and unjust for allowing people to enjoy the outdoors without textiles. I'm not an active member of a naturist organization, but there are several that are involved with that, including one called the Gay Naturists International. I believe they're based in Florida now. And they host several retreats for largely gay and bisexual men every year. And that's where I learned about the joys of doing naked yoga myself, because I was a student at several of those gatherings in the Pocono Mountains of Pennsylvania in the 90s. And that's what inspired my interest in fusing the love I have of the awareness of the body with health and wellness, and then in a sense of community. I began teaching my naked yoga classes in San Francisco 12 years ago. It's my understanding at around that time that this has become a bigger awareness, certainly in both the gay and straight communities, as far as yoga adherence. I don't claim to have any exclusive or original issues about naked yoga, and as you probably now know if you read any of the papers or you have friends who practice yoga, that there are many available sites now, both in the Mission and in the East Bay, and now in the South Bay for enjoying naked yoga for men. My interest at this point is in enjoying naked yoga in the outdoors. So I've been looking for places to host outdoor gatherings. I have a friend who has a lovely backyard in the South Bay where the weather's a little more reliable. So in the autumn and in the spring, he and I co-host what I call yoga picnics, in which we offer sessions of asanas first. We take a light refreshment break, and then the second half of the session is devoted to partner yoga, in which I pair someone up with someone his shape or size, and then we progress with poses and awareness and balance and in breath. My understanding of naked yoga as it relates to a discipline is that there were several adherents of this in India. One of the most likely and most famous known of these practitioners at the turn of the last century was someone named Nigamananda Paramahansa, who apparently was well known, and that was an honorific given to him. And the word Paramahansa, as I understand it, one of its definitions is to be in divine ecstasy and actively wakeful. And I also think that there are many powerful elements that come from us being in that ecstatic state of awareness. And we know that there are many ways we can achieve that in this mortal coil in which we live. We all know about the power of breath. Many of you may have also been exposed to training programs with an organization called the Body Electric School. Have any of you done any of that? Okay, a good number of you. So you are aware of the power of ritual, the use of your own body awareness, the breathing, the sense of community you have in a safe and a consensual space in which to practice this art of engagement and embodiment, as it's called as well. And I guess naked yoga in its own sense, people ask, well, what's the difference and why do you bother in that? And I guess everyone's going to have a different preference about how they like to practice something that allows them to stay in an embodied place or in a greater sense of awareness. My own personal philosophy is that if you're freed from the restrictions of clothing, you have a better awareness, if you will, of your own body, your body's abilities, your body's balance. So then the inevitable question comes up, certainly among men of a certain orientation. Well, if I go, am I going to be self-conscious? Am I going to have body reactions that might happen in my community of men? To which I say yes, and maybe. What happens, of course, when your body's engaged in its own state of mindfulness and awareness, as you well know by doing your gatherings here and elsewhere, you understand that you will have an opportunity to go within, and that the distractions of the outer world will become less important as you gain a deeper understanding of your own body and your own awareness. I don't know how much you all do in your training here with the study of Buddhism. I know there are many sects, much as the tree of yoga has now branched out into a variety of disciplines. The American Institute of Vedic Sciences has cited that yoga and Buddhism are sister traditions, and that sutras, or the scriptures, and the Vedic texts, or the Upanishads, found similarities as far as the abilities of mindfulness and awareness, and how that Buddha's teachings about how everything that is created is impermanent, and that what we do in this life is to strive with an awareness, and that we will judge truth of any philosophy by its consequences. So for me, I think what that means as it relates to a meditative awareness in a yogic state is that if we follow his beliefs of the meditative absorption that is combined with a liberating cognition, which are a lot of 10-cent words to describe what we all can do on our own, in our own capacity, with our guides, our mantras, our communities, if you that here, that we are able to work on that combination of liberation from the distractions of our outside world. And the ideas that we have several skandhas. I understand that a fifth one is now, that's often used as far as describing our perceptions. That the idea of how we fuse the body with our feelings and our sensations, with our perceptions and our ideas, and our basic consciousness, as well as our what they call the storehouse consciousness, and an integrative capacity. I think for me that's one of the best joys and opportunities in practicing a regular form of body awareness. And there are many ways that we can stay healthy in our body, as we know. And I think yoga certainly is a natural output of doing some kind of meditation in its own sense. My partner Angus and I have seen a couple of the films now in the Gay and Lesbian Film Festival, and we were charmed to see a movie last night that profiled the poet James Broughton called Big Joy, which I highly recommend you see if you get a chance, if it's offered anywhere else. And I'm reminded that one of the collaborators of Mr. Broughton was a dancer named Anna Halpern, who many of you may know if you enjoy dance. She's well known for her experimental and collaborative ventures. And she came on stage yesterday afternoon after the movie was over for the Q&A, and she said that every morning, and this woman's in her 90s now, and she still looks fit as a fiddle and very sharp, she said that every morning she engages in her body by using a hula hoop. And I was struck by how simple that is in its elemental fashion of connecting, as she said, her body with her mind. And I think in our modern world, it's easy for us to have that separation because we have deadlines, we have distractions, we have roommate or relationship issues. And the nature of the reconnection and the realignment of our body and our mind, I think, are ever more important, particularly as we move on in this world, in our life, and in our aging. So what are some of the benefits, I guess, if you don't already know something about yoga? There are now medical studies that suggest that there's more of a stillness that comes from mental activity, that there is a greater release of certain neurotransmitters and amino acids in the brain, which can contribute to a sense of calmness, a sense of well-being. There are musculoskeletal benefits to any form of an approach to an exercise and wellness routine, which include balance and coordination and in strength. The whole idea that we add something else to our life because we sometimes feel we don't have time for it is all the more reason I think we need to make that time to celebrate our own body in a form that works for us in a way that gives us some sense of a discipline and an attainment of goals. And I understand that's what the word siddhartha means, is one who has attained goals. And I see that as a way that we can allow our own sense of awareness and alignment to be focused when we give it something to connect again the body with the mind. I'd like to engage all of you in just a brief exercise, but I promise we'll keep our clothes on. If I can have everybody stand. If you can stand with your feet apart about the width of your hips, okay? And if you've been sitting for a long time, this is a good opportunity just to get up and let the blood flow in your body. Okay. So what I like to do for people who are especially new to any kind of a yogic experience is to help them focus on the body awareness. So by keeping your knees soft or gently bent, again, your feet are about the width of your hips, your arms are resting gently by your sides. If you wish, you can close your eyes, but I'll just invite you to invoke in your own sense and fashion a sense of your own breath awareness. And typically in a breath awareness fashion, if you can breathe in through your nostrils and slowly out through your mouth as a means and as a mechanism for how you might achieve a greater sense of your own awareness, and how you can acknowledge that the constant chatter that goes on in all of our brains, because it's an electronic instrument, can be slowed or can be halted, or can be diverted. And when I'm encouraging people to achieve something, a form of a yogic or meditative state, I'll invite them to welcome any chatter that comes through, but to acknowledge that maybe it's its own little raft and that it floats away on the babbling waters as they move along. So again, I'll just invite your attention to your slow breathing in through your nose and gently out through your mouth, and several applications of that on your own pace and your own time. And then with the breath, if we can bring our hands forward in front of our hearts in a namaste pose. All the while, we'll take note of how our body feels. If there's some place that's tight, what I also advise people to think about is that as you breathe in the awareness of that part of the body that might be tight, and on the exhale, you imagine that that tightness melts away. And now I'll invite with a slow breath that we raise the arms as high as we can without it hurting. Again, I advise everyone to go to their level of capacity, of ability, and bringing the arms up as high as they can. And ideally, if you can bring the biceps toward the ears, all the while you're maintaining that grounded space in the lower half of the body with the knees gently bent. And again, the breath coming in gently through the nose, and slowly exhale through the mouth. And then with a gentle breath in, on the exhale, we'll slowly bring the arms back down, and in so doing, we'll now gently twist to our left and bring your chin to your left shoulder as you engage the stretch, expand the chest. Again, breathing into those tight spots, imagining they melt away in breath. Gentle breath in as we bring the chest and the torso back to the midline. And then on a breath out, we'll twist to the other direction. As we know, one of the words that yoga represents in our language is union. And it's always a good idea to acknowledge both halves of our corporeal essence. Again, taking note of how you feel, where it's tight, breathing in through the nose, gently exhale through the mouth. And then with a gentle breath, we'll bring the chest and torso forward. And with a vigorous breath, let's bring the arms back up. And then on the exhale, let's gently bring the arms backward as we thrust the torso forward. Again, go to your point of alignment and resilience, keeping your knees gently bent, and then taking note of how the body feels. Gentle, slow breath as we straighten the body gently upward. And then if you can, we'll slowly bend forward and bring the hands downward. Keep the knees bent to protect your lower back. You can let your hands dangle downward. And in this position, if you can, just imagine how you lengthen the distance between your ankles and your buttocks by
Stretching and strengthening the legs. The hamstrings, as we all know, very important part of the body, but they also help regulate your back health. So by keeping your hamstrings stretched, the backs of your legs, it can help with overall stretching and coordination. And then with a slow breath, we're going to slowly bring our bodies up. Just imagine that as you slowly bring your arms upward, your head will be the last to come up. And you can imagine each nub of the vertebra is engaging as you slowly bring the chest and the torso up. Again, the head will be the last to come up. A modification of a sun salutation is a good warm-up for anyone's body awareness in any kind of yoga. I'll invite you, if you're able, then now to lean gently onto your left foot, standing as you are. And then for those of you who can, if you can now raise your right foot off, maybe 2 to 3 inches off. The trick on this one is to focus your eyes on some inanimate object that helps you with balance and support. Find a way to make it work for you. In engagement, again, slow breath in through the nose, gentle exhalation out through the mouth. And a slow breath as you bring both feet down and gently cushion your descent as you bring that down. And then we'll slowly bring the weight to the right ankle. And if you are able, then to bring your left foot up a couple inches off the floor if possible, or any pose that works for you if you are already engaged in a yoga practice. In breath, in balance, in awareness. As we slowly lower the left foot down, we'll cushion the landing as we come down. And let's engage in gentle, big breaths as we raise the arms upward and exhale as we lower and slow down. And on this last one, if we can elevate the arms, clasp the palms together, holding them. And in this capacity, if you can take a gentle breath up and then hold your breath at the very top. And then with a slow exhale, we'll slowly exhale and bring the hands back down to the heart. Now try to imagine all this without your clothes on. These are some of the elements of the classes that I teach. So I thank you for your movement and your engagement. And in my research and preparation for my presentation, I was struck by several phrases about the reinforcement of the body and the mind and the spirit connection. And I like the phrase that describes a yogi. I do not consider myself a yogi. I consider myself a student of yoga. However, a yogi engages in a definite procedure by which the body and the mind are disciplined and the soul is gradually liberated. And that's a quotation from Paramahansa Yogananda, who wrote the autobiography of a yogi. And one last phrase I'll leave you before allowing for any questions, if anyone has any, is that nirvana, which is that state of perfection, I guess, is samsara.
that the perfected life in this life is something that I hope I may strive for in my lifetime.
Thank you. Well, floor is open for questions.
Yes.
When you're looking for a naked yoga class to kind of experience what you've been talking about, is there anything you would recommend looking for in the descriptions that would allow you to tell the difference between some that are there for actual, some kind of spiritual and bodily enlightenment, as opposed to the ones that are just kind of smarmy and the teacher really doesn't know about yoga and it's just kind of there for guys to check each other.
Well, that's a good question. I would hope that anyone who's offering this kind of instruction would be very frank and open about his credentials. I don't know all the credentials of all the guys that teach over at the Mission Sunroom, but apparently they're all very well trained. And I have several people that have come to my classes who also go to theirs and say good things about them. But I think you're right. If you want to know what the atmosphere is going to be like in the course of the classes, it would be good to know how he or she represents himself or herself in their training, their statement about how they want to create a space or a vessel for this process and this engagement. I think it's also in your best interest to go and try one out and see if it's something that works for you. There's so many ways that people can express themselves in a yoga capacity. Yoga seems to be a generic phrase now for many people in this country. My joke is in San Francisco, there's a yoga studio on every street corner. And what I have been talking to people about is that, particularly if they're new to this and they're anxious about getting involved with something they don't know, is that it's best to do as you suggest, that they meet with or interview or research the credentials of the people who are teaching, maybe meet with them in advance of a course, and then actually engage in one to see if it works for them. Because some people that I have worked with, and I work several clients who have injuries, and they're very concerned about getting involved in some yoga practice that may not honor the fact that they have a rotator cuff injury or that they've had a hip replacement. And I think the smarter teachers, particularly ones who go through a lot more continuing education, are going to know how to work with special populations to make accommodation. And then because there's so many routes now of yoga as far as what's available, there's yoga for restoration, there's yoga for seniors, there's quiet meditative yoga, so there's a lot of, I think, variety now for people to choose something that they might feel appropriate for them.
In connection, total ignorance of a lot of the yoga tradition and practice, but I have come across a lot of references to something I think is called Bikram, which is apparently held in rooms at pretty high temperature.
Yes.
And I was wondering what the advantage or whatever you can tell us about it is.
Well, I'll be very careful because this is a proprietary course that was established by someone named Bikram Chaudhuri, who is from India, who I understand studied with some great masters in India, and who came to the United States and popularized a very discrete and disciplined set of movements in a highly heated room, where I believe the temperature is about 104 degrees Fahrenheit. Now, the expression of advantage of this form of yoga is that at that very high temperature, you sweat out and release a lot of toxins, and the engagement of these very refined and disciplined moves helps a variety of situations and many people with coordination and balance. The one thing I will say about any kind of yoga that has some kind of an extreme element to it is that one has to be very mindful of one's own body. And there are perhaps concerns one might have in practicing yoga in a very hot situation like that with an elevated temperature, in which one may not be able to feel a change in a body's connective tissue because of the elevated temperature. One may or may not be aware of one's body's reaction to a certain move. That's the caution I give everyone who's going to engage in that kind of a yoga practice, that one has to be more mindful of one's own body's limitations as well as reactions to the moves. But apparently it's quite popular, and there are classes all through the country.
Is naked yoga affiliated with a certain discipline or type of yoga, or is it work with all the disciplines?
Well, I believe the guru who was well regarded and who popularized some of it at the turn of the 19th and 20th centuries was following Hatha, which is a traditional form, I guess, that uses the asanas and the poses. I think every teacher is probably going to offer a discipline that works for him or for her. Mine is very eclectic. I've studied with people who've done Hatha yoga. I've studied with people who've done Iyengar, which is a form of poses which also gives you some corrective props to allow you to affect better motion or range of motion and movement in your work. There are many offshoots of that, but that's something you might want to ask one of the practitioners or teachers if you're interested in doing it, if he or she follows a particular discipline.
Is there any overlap between naturalism and nudism?
Well, I understand the word is natureism, as I understand it. And nudism, I guess, is certainly an offshoot of that. I think what, in our language, however, because language can often be construed in specific ways or personalized ways, that some people, when they see the word or hear the word nude, sometimes they think it might be connected with lewd. And I don't often think that's fair as a connotation or an equation. I believe that's maybe why the word naturism, which I think is derived from the European use of the word from the 19th century. But nude need not be lewd. Notwithstanding San Francisco city supervisor ordinances.
So are the naked yoga in the Bay Area, are they generally heated rooms?
I've attended classes at the Mission Room, the Sunroom rather, in the Mission, and the room's at a comfortable temperature. I imagine it's kind of like here. I mean, we have, about 35 or 40 people in this space, and we're all going to emit some body temperature to make that a comfortable. I don't believe any of them are doing the Bikram at this point, but that's something you can check if you go to their website and find out about that. I don't think it's appropriate for anyone to be in yoga in a cold environment, because you're fighting against the element, and then you're not allowing your body to engage in the process that you hope for. But I think a room that's got good insulation and has ability for you to be in a space that's big enough for you to move around and be aware of your own body movement, I think that's probably an ideal environment for you. You had a question about that?
Yes, I'm wondering if you explore or practice I can't remember the name of it, but the reverse nostril breathing and the rising of Kundalini.
Those aren't parts that I'm as familiar with, but I'm sure there are practitioners who are doing that kind of thing. Is that something you're interested in?
It happened once, so no, I don't choose to repeat it, actually.
It was not pleasant. I'm sorry for that.
No, it just was larger than life, and
so to speak.
Okay, thanks.
Yes.
Related to that same thing, I once was at a workshop where, to breathe in one nostril and out the other, and I spent so much time trying to figure out how to do it. I wondered if that was the point of it, to keep your brain busy with it, and it really didn't have anything to do with one nostril or the other.
Well, I think there's a delicate balance between our process and our form with respect to anything we want to do that we think we want to master. One of your colleagues here gave me access to a video that John Kabat-Zinn offers that's available widely on YouTube about the whole nature of mindfulness and awareness. And I think he made a good point somewhere in the presentation about acknowledging that, and that sometimes if we allow ourselves to get tripped up in that part of the process, we don't allow for the fuller sense of our body awareness. But how did it work for you? Were you feeling that it was too clumsy, or it was too calculated, or too complicated when you were doing it?
Too calculated. I had a similar reaction to Jim. I chose not to do that again. It seemed...
What I would say in defense of that kind of approach is that perhaps another instructor or teacher might be someone who has a better or more intuitive sense of how you and the rest of the people gathered would be able to facilitate that in practice.
I think I needed more of an introduction. It was like plunk, right into this more challenging thing.
And I think that's the reason some people get turned away by yoga in general. If they're not in the right place, if they haven't perhaps had a chance to meet with the instructor before, if they hadn't asked questions, if the approach is too fast, or if the poses are too complex. I think also because we're all human beings and many of us have this natural tendency to compare or to compete, sometimes classes can get like that as well, that we have the sense that the person next to me is doing a much more beautiful triangle than I am, or balancing on one leg much more elegantly than me, and what's wrong with me? And that's something one hopes that one can move away from in the right environment that's supportive and engaging in the ways that helps you achieve your best. Because that's really what it's about, is achieving your own sense of awareness and balance.
I was wondering how you deal with the issue of sex in your naked yoga practice. Is it like, and I get the impression that some of these groups are like preludes to orgies, and others are like, I know Body Electric was very sort of pseudo-sexual to me, and I know like tantric yoga is sort of like a pseudonym for anal sex. I don't know. There's all these code words that float around, and I don't really know. I suppose everybody's different.
I think your last sentence is probably the most accurate one there. I have never had a conscious engagement of being a sexual environment in my classes. I will admit that sometimes I think there's a higher level of erotic awareness because gay men especially are being naked, and there is that energy. And as I said earlier in the presentation, if one is serious and one is focused about this engagement, those feelings will, as I've said before, they're on their own little raft and they float away. And I also think it's the responsibility of the people who are inviting the gathering to maintain a sense of what their ambition and their ideas are. And mine have always been about the engagement of the celebrating of the body electric, if you will. And for those of you who don't know about the programs of the Body Electric, I'd recommend you go to their website, because at least you'll learn more about what their presentation is, about their approach to erotic touch and erotic embodiment. Not everyone has a good experience. I appreciate that. But I think it goes back to the intention and the integrity of the process of the people who are making the gathering and the invitation. And mine is certainly one of, I hope, respect and encouragement. It's not to engage in what I think what you would be describing as something completely different. It would be confusing, it's distracting, it gets away from this whole essence of what we're all working toward, I think, in an engagement in a yoga circle. Yes?
Could you say something about the relationship between a spiritual practice and yoga? I mean, if it's a sister practice to Buddhism. And my sense is that some people approach it spiritually, and others go to yoga 3 times a week.
I'm sure you're absolutely right.
Not that there has to be a dualistic split between the two.
I think there will be, and I don't think there does have to be. If we understand what some of the same principles that you might be employing here in a Buddhist meditative capacity about stillness, of awareness, I think many of the same principles apply to someone who forms a discipline around a body awareness with poses or engagements of the body that stretch limits. So I think in those ways they are parallel and similar in fashion. I think they can be divergent, and I agree you probably have friends who look at yoga as the same thing as going to play a softball game or going on the treadmill 3 days a week. I personally think that yoga has many capacities beyond just being the flavor of the month as far as how it helps us with healing. I speak personally from someone who had a foot injury the day before I was going to teach a yoga class, and I was very nervous about teaching the class because I didn't think I was going to be any good, and I wasn't at my best. And I found that since I taught that class, I healed faster. So I think that this whole promotion of self-healing, which is my big thing about doing anything in health and wellness, can be enhanced by a focused discipline approach to something in your body. And that same, too, I think, applies to meditation, a regular practice, a regular focus on your ritual, your discipline, your awareness. I think they are hand in hand in that way, and I think they're complementary as well as separate. Yes?
I wonder if you can say a few things about your own personal practice of yoga. What is your normal routine, and how does that fit into your life?
Every morning I awaken and I meditate. I meditate twice a day. I studied transcendental meditation. That was the discipline I learned 35 years ago. So I engage in a meditative ritual at dawn and usually at dusk. Following my meditation in the morning, I usually will do some yoga stretching. And usually I take a bath. My partner has made me learn much more about the values and benefits of taking a bath. And we're lucky to have a bathtub at our place. But I find just the nature of disconnecting from distractions of television and phone and noise and cacophony, if you can, with a bath, mineral salts, a little bath gel, something is just, it's wonderful. It's a way of honoring the body and honoring time in a way that helps us get grounded and ready for the day. And then I'll make the rounds that I typically do in my day job. I work in a doctor's office, and that's busy with phone calls and patients and charts and meetings and things. And usually when I come home from work, that's the first thing I do after kissing my partner and finding out how his day went, is engaging in my second round of my meditation. And it's been working for me. I find it very healing and very helpful to erase some of the chatter that's accumulated in the course of the day. And I'm sure all of you know that, given that you're adherents here on a regular basis. Did that answer your question?
Yes. Yeah.
This is kind of like the question dealing with the complication of sexuality in this too. Are your classes reserved just for gay men, or do they have gay men, straight men, or do they have women and men, and do they have women and men? Do the women feel comfortable being naked in front of heterosexual men?
I have not yet taught mixed gender classes. I'm considering it because I'd like to add some other elements of body awareness into those classes, but my classes have traditionally been for men. I don't necessarily say for gay men, I say for men, any man who feels comfortable coming and identifying. And because I don't create a sexualized atmosphere, my hope is anyone who comes for the joy of expressing their engagement and awareness and meditation in their body without clothes will come.
Any other questions? If not,
yeah, I think a little one. I have a practice in the morning where I do a little yoga, a little stretching first, and then I meditate. And it sounds like you reverse that. You meditate first and do your yoga. Is it just a matter of preference, or do you think it's more beneficial?
I think for me it's the way I help myself awaken. But if it works better for you to get out of bed and to do the stretching before you do the yoga. My only suggestion about if you do it that way, the first thing out of bed, if you're going to stretch, you have to be careful about what you can and can't do in your stretching when you first get out of bed. So I would be mindful of doing maybe the very long flowing stretches, and don't hold them for a couple of seconds. I would hold them longer than a couple of seconds, because
There's new studies that suggest static stretching before any other kind of body engagement might be a problem, so one has to be careful of that. But if you're mindful of how you do your stretching. Do you find, though, that in the stretching that, because you're following that with breathing, that you find that helps achieve some sense of the form of calm or meditation that you get in?
Yeah, I find it's a nice part of my meditation. It helps me get my body in nice shape and calms the mind, and it seems to be helpful.
Whatever works. I would bottle that and import it and export it to all of you. Another question?
I have an old yoga practice, and then when I've noticed when life intervenes and I don't get to do it, that my erotic charge is higher. Have you ever encountered that?
When you're not doing your yoga practice, your erotic charge is higher.
Yeah.
Well, then I would ask you an empirical question. Is everything else equal in your life as far as stimulation or distraction?
I wouldn't. It's not a scientific study. I just noticed that sometimes it's a little more.
Well, I'm not a physician.
No, I just want to think in terms of energy centers or the balancing. It didn't, since the balancing didn't happen with the practice.
You know what I would say to that? I would say that you could use your erotic energy as an engagement for your yoga practice or your meditative practice, because it's energy. I mean, all of us are bodies of energy, and that can be channeled in ways that are healthful and beneficial to you as a practitioner.
Or wasted in pleasure.
I don't ever think I call pleasure a waste.
Thank you.
And do you hold regular classes that you might be able to tell us about?
I am not using any indoor spots these days. I was for many years, hosting sessions at rented spaces. I am primarily doing them outdoors, but they're limited to certain times of the year. So I can leave some brochures, but the next classes I'll be co-hosting will be in the autumn, because, again, I'm using a friend's backyard, which is a private space. We can get 12 guys into the space. But it's just too hot in the summer down in the South Bay, so I wait until the autumn. The autumn and the spring are the best times. But I'm always looking for outdoor locations or venues, if anyone has any. That in the city of San Francisco, however, it's unreliable. I can't plan ahead in the same way you could in the East or South Bays.
Okay, looks like got the questions answered. Thank you very much.
Thank you for
we
your time.
normally we hold half-hour social at the end, so if you're welcome to stay, and and if somebody has questions to ask, then it would be a good time. So, okay. So, do we have any announcements at this point?
I'm Jim. I'm your host. Hi, Jim. Hi, Ray. Let's see, 4 things I'm supposed to tell you. There are refreshments, snacks, there's hot water for tea. If you use your cup, please wash it after you're done and put it back on the rack. I made some of Gwyneth Paltrow's gluten-free, vegan, sweet potato spice muffins.
They'll disappear off the shelf.
And then there's some other stuff catered by Trader Joe. Let's see, there's a sign-up list if you're new. Please put your email and your street address on that. I'll be going around with the Donna Bowl, and I think recommended donations are 5 to 8, I don't know, somewhere in there. So more if you can, less if you can't. And some of us meet at the front door around 12:30 to go out for lunch after the group.
And I may add the parking reminder that the parking meters kick in at 12 noon, and they're like $3.25 or $3.75 an hour. So it might not be a bad idea if you park, then you're gonna hang around for a few minutes too.
If the meter runs out, it's $115.
115, oh wow. So,
Yes.
from bitter experience, I suppose.
No, I just saw somebody got a ticket, and the meter ran out, and it said $115.
Okay, and do we have, we should have an announcement about our... Yes.
Next week, our speaker is our own Bob McMullen, who will be tracing the important, the spiritual journey. That's what we'll do about.
My journey.
Yes.
Okay, that's it.
Be there.
Otherwise known as the trip. Not that journey.
Okay, folks, so then this is the point at which we form a circle and do our dedication of merit. By the power and truth of this practice, may all beings have happiness and the causes of happiness. May all be free from sorrow and the causes of sorrow. May all never be separated from the sacred happiness, which is without sorrow. And may all live in equanimity without too much attachment or too much aversion, believing in the equality of all that lives.
Thank you for listening to the Gay Buddhist Forum. If you would like to hear several new talks per month and be notified of upcoming speakers so you can participate live, please subscribe to this podcast, like us on Facebook, and join our mailing list by visiting gaybuddhist.org.